Hello and welcome everybody. I should say good morning, good afternoon and good evening. Thank you to everybody who's joining us, mainly from Europe, from the Middle East, from Central Eastern Europe, from Russia, and actually from around the world. We really are delighted to see you with us today. And as many of you have already referred to in the discussion, we've got a really exciting presentation, panel and discussion coming up, and a few new things as well from the last executive forum that we held. So we're looking forward to that. The course, just for those of you who are new to this format and new to this session, I'm Kirsten Williamson. I'm the CEO of Petrus, and I'm the co-chair of the Global Engineering Deans Council Industry Forum. The Industry Forum was created to really find a collaborative space for senior leaders in engineering education and in industry to exchange on common issues and design the engineering education that we need for the future together. And the Executive Forum, with the support of Coursera, is enabling us to continue these important discussions and ensure that we continue to share good practice, learn from each other, and especially in these times when there is so much to learn, that we really explore how we can make engineering education fit for purpose and to support the development of engineering experts and innovators and leaders for the future. Like the Industry Forum, this format is designed to ensure that there's plenty of time for interaction and that every voice is heard. So while we'll have a panel discussion to inspire us, and we will be inspired by the fantastic representatives that we've got from industry and from education, we'll have time for questions from everybody in the audience. And then for group discussion, we'll hear back from the groups. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have a new and interactive format for the final 30 minutes to try out a new tool, which I think will really help us to improve on that networking that we have been so missing out on. So our theme today: how can digital education and access to digital labs help to prepare engineers to succeed in the world of work? For me, this is a subject really close to my heart because I see how students sometimes feel that because they are not able to go on site with intern hosts and to do internships in person or to travel in person and get that intercultural experience, they feel like they're missing out on something. And although nobody wants to take away in-person experiences for the future, in fact, learning online can be fantastic preparation for the world of work. And so we need to think together about how to make sure we're making the most of that and also ensure that students understand that it's a great opportunity for them, even though there are challenges. And I'll come back to this topic, but of course, International Women in Engineering Day is tomorrow, and we've got a few subjects that we'll explore in relation to that too. I think to kick off, I'd like to hear from our audience straight away. So we're going to launch a poll, and I wonder if Razvan in the background, if you can give a hand with that. I would like to ask, what are the three, digital education. Digital education could mean lots of different things, couldn't it? There could be lots of different features to education. What I would like to see, what do you think are the three biggest advantages of digital education? So if you could launch that poll, please, team. So in the audience, you can see there in front of you, there are 8 different options. Just quickly pick what you think are the 3 biggest advantages of digital education. Just click in the box, click submit. I think we'll take a look and see what we've got. So Razvan, if you could go ahead and share what are the answers so far to the 3 biggest advantages. So remote or mobile learning, okay, no need to be physically present. That one is kind of obvious, isn't it? That's a given. And in second place, and I'm delighted to see this, education accessible to a more diverse audience. So we will explore that definitely. It is one of the premises of this session, is really to understand how online education can help encourage more female learners into engineering and into the workplace. Then we've got quite a range of other responses. I'm interested to see that more hands-on learning is fairly low, and we're going to explore that a little bit as well, because hands-on learning is absolutely essential to engineering education. You know, engineering is something that's applied, isn't it? So we will explore that. Nobody has said that a key advantage is enabling institutions to be more agile. Now, that is interesting, because agile institutions, agile engineering education is a topic that we're going to be exploring further. So that clearly needs a bit more thought on our side. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Great to see what you chose in the poll. And I think that we will now move on, and I will introduce the panelists who are going to help us decipher these questions, these advantages, and find out more about digital education and access to the workplace. So with us today, I'm going to start by introducing Maria Angeles Martin-Prats. Just thrilled to have Maria Angeles with us, Associate Professor of Electronics Engineering in the University of Seville, also set up and runs her own engineering company, and is leader of a research laboratory at Seville. In fact, in this very big institution, the only female faculty leading a laboratory, and so a great experience to share with us. We also have Bonnie Willoughby, Director of Global Learning Services at Siemens Digital Industries Software. Bonnie brings over 30 years in education to the panel today, and you know, with her passion, enthusiasm and expertise to share. There's really a lot that we can learn. Delighted also to have with us Laura Hyatt, Solutions Architect at Amazon Web Services. I know that Laura will not mind, and I hope the other panelists will also not mind, that I'm really thrilled to have Laura's experience, also to bring a generational perspective to the panel. Are things changing, and has anything been easier for Laura bringing her engineering skills into the workplace? And Samar Farah, delighted to have a skills transformation consultant from Coursera with us too, to talk about not just her own experience in designing engineering programs in the Middle East to make education more accessible to young people and employment more accessible, but the great and deep experience that she has from the work that Coursera have been doing. And we're going to kick off our discussion. I'm going to ask all of the speakers to say a couple of words and introduce themselves and their experience, and then we'll dive straight into questions, and looking forward to hearing your questions too. I must say, we have a fantastic lineup today. I hope you will be indulgent of the fact that although there is a great deal of diversity on this panel, all our speakers are female today. Usually we really take care about gender diversity on our panels, and this is really in recognition and celebration of International Women's Day of Engineering, which is tomorrow. And I'm really thrilled to have such experts with us today, also to celebrate and to explore that subject of women in engineering. Great. So yes, if we could perhaps see our speakers. Thank you very much. It's just brilliant to see you all. Welcome, and yeah, great to see the comments that are already coming through. Maybe we could start. Maria Angeles, can I come to you? Could you introduce yourself briefly and give us just a quick comment on your experience to date regarding digital education or workplace skills?
Okay, thank you very much, Kristen. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm very grateful to you for this nice invitation. You are a wonderful woman, so I'm very committed with diversity and you know, women in engineering. And I have been involved in many committees, international groups working on in women in engineering. So it's a pleasure to be here. So as you said before, I'm professor at the University of Seville in Spain. I'm teaching during more than 20 years, 21, and so many years, 15 different subjects, I think, so a lot, all of them in engineering. And I am the head of the avionics research group. So I'm a researcher, I'm a professor, and also I'm a businesswoman because I created a company 10 years ago for engineers, for you, for all of you, and for women. So I will tell you later, but I try to implement specific actions in order to increase the number of women in engineering. So as you know, the average in engineering studying engineering is 20%, more or less, and we have at the company 30%. So step by step, day by day, we're increasing the number of women working in engineering, in designing. So yes, it's a pleasure to be here. So Kirsten, if you want, I can give more details later.
Thank you very much, Marielle. Let's hear a quick introduction from our other panelists, and then we're going to come back and explore that with you. So if I can go to Bonnie now. Bonnie, could you, if you can unmute yourself, and let's hand over the mic to you. Or Rezvan, if you can update.
Yes. Okay, hello. Thank you so much for including me. My name is Bonnie, and I'm so happy to be here today. Maybe I am the most senior person on this panel today. I'm happy about it. My background, I am actually an electrical engineer. Let's see, I've been, as mentioned, in the education field for over 30 years. I want to share with you that I'm also a mom of 3 very successful young adults. One of my daughters is also an engineer. So I'm glad to, be carrying inside my own family. What I'm hoping is, more female getting involved in engineering. I can share with you a couple of key milestones of my career, which is why this discussion is so important to me today. One of them is at my previous employer, I helped bring to market an online education for our customer base. And to be honest with you, when I put a couple of classes on a CD, on a DVD, maybe some of you don't even know what that is. Everybody looked at me like I was crazy. How is it possible to do education online, and anybody who would want to get educated, self-paced education and online education? And then fast forward to what we all just experienced in the past year with the pandemic. Can you imagine if we didn't have online education, digital education, what we would have done, right? So important to have that. And also our certification was another program for our online education, something that I helped bring to market. So hopefully I can answer some questions for you a little later on. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you so much for the engaging discussion that we're about to have.
Brilliant. Thank you, Bonnie, for joining us, and we're just thrilled to have you here. I'm going to turn to Laura now. Laura, please introduce yourself and tell us something about your perspective on this digital education and workplace skills.
Yeah, of course. So hi, everyone. My name's Laura. So I'm really excited to be here. It's actually something that I'm really, really passionate about, actually, sort of online learning. So obviously I'm a solutions architect at AWS. And previous to that, I did a cloud engineering job. But then actually previous to that, I was in more technology project management. And I've kind of shifted what I've done career-wise. And that wouldn't have been possible without online learning courses and labs as well. And so it's really something that I'm really, really passionate about, because I wouldn't have my job today if I hadn't done online learning. So I think something that I want to, obviously I'll talk about sort of my career and how I suppose I did it over the course of this, but also to kind of explain that you can change your career. It's not set in stone from the minute that you leave university or school, which is something that I thought at the time it was, and actually it's completely changed. And I've seen a lot of other people change their career as well. So hopefully I can give insight into that as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Laura. And that is a really important message for students, I think, at the time when they, hesitate about not having picked the perfect job for themselves, to understand that there are many ways that they can progress and change. And I didn't mention, but I will mention now that we are recording this session, and it will be available on the Industry Forum website. And if there's something here as part of the session that you would like to use in your institution, either to help share a message message about digital education, online learning, or for example, pick up on something that one of the speakers has said, please don't hesitate to let us know. And so I'm coming last and not least to Samar. And Samar, I'd really love you to introduce yourself, and maybe you can kick off our discussion with the focus on this topic of skills. I know that Coursera does a lot of data research insights, looking at what people on your platform are using, and also looking at how that links to what your workplace and your industry users are using. And I think that you've got some recent research about trending skills that perhaps you could share with us as well to kick off. So please introduce yourself and let's hear about trending skills.
Sure, thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here with everyone today. And I have to say, I'm very honored to be the one non-engineer on this panel. So thank you for including me. And it's a pleasure to be around such esteemed colleagues as well. In terms of my background, I have worked in higher education, essentially my whole career. I spent over 10 years supporting students access higher education, and then transition successfully to work. Over the last few years before joining Coursera, I did that for a large philanthropic entity based in the Middle East, and really designed scholarship programs that tried to place students into engineering programs specifically. So I definitely had that experience of supporting students. And I think one of the interesting things that I learned there is that despite the fact that they were, some of the brightest students in their classes, they were attending some of the best universities globally, they still were lacking some of these key skills or support services that they needed, like the hands-on learning experiences, how to access internships, when and how often to do that, how to develop their soft skills, and also be exposed to areas outside of engineering and their area of expertise so that they can be agile and flexible when they join the workplace and be successful. So now at Coursera, I'm able to be on the other side where I get to engage and advise educational institutions on how to design those kinds of support services and skills development plans to make sure that students really have everything that they need to do that, and also how to complement what they're already doing really well in a very difficult time to ensure that students can be successful when they graduate. So that's just a little bit about myself and some thoughts around that. But just to address what you've shared, Kristen, some of the trending skills that we're seeing, obviously, it's been a very eventful year for everyone, a difficult one at that, I would say, for universities. And I think it's important to recognize, that the fact that, the transition to online learning has not been easy. But I think, the main point here is that we want to learn from this experience and make the most out of it to ensure that students are able to transition well, in these very new circumstances. So, the first thing that we're seeing from the data that we have on Coursera is that, unsurprisingly, employability is the top priority for every student, especially in these times with COVID. It's exacerbated the difficulties that anyone already faces transitioning into the workplace, given that the types of jobs, the types of skills, and the types of tasks even that we do have shifted in a significant way. So around 93% of learners on our platform said that they're learning a new skill on Coursera, and another 57% said that they're learning something that they are not currently learning in university. So that's something important to take into account. What is the reason why that is the case? And I think that's an important question. But also, what are these skills that they're learning? So the first, the next trend, I guess, that's specific to engineering schools that I wanted to share is that there's a big gap between what learners on our platform, students in universities, have in terms of skills in engineering versus what professionals within the engineering space have in terms of skills. And the big gap that we're seeing between the two is that students don't have enough software engineering, statistical programming, and data management skills as compared to professionals in that space. So that's really one important area, or three important areas that are important for universities to take into account, to think about, are these things that we're offering these are really areas of priority in terms of the jobs and the skills that people are going to need in the future. So what are some of the ways in which we need to start incorporating some of those skills and courses that will ensure students are better prepared for expertise in those areas? And the final thing that I wanted to share is that what learners are actually coming to us to study. It's one thing between what is the gap between students and employers, but the other thing is, what is the student experience? Why are they coming onto Coursera? And the three areas, interestingly, that overlap with what I've just shared are computer science, data science, and business. And so you are seeing that students are becoming more aware of what they need to be successful in the workplace, and therefore they're finding new opportunities to access this kind of content through platforms like Coursera to fill in those gaps that they may have either in their current educational experience, or because maybe there's not enough flexibility in the programs they're in, where they can take courses in some areas that are outside of their area of expertise. So we'll be touching a little bit more on that, but I just wanted to share that these are some of the general trends that we're seeing when it comes to engineering schools and students, and happy to share more.
That's just fantastic. Thank you. It's great to hear that kind of hot off the press, Samara, as well. And there's a trend behind that, which I think is fascinating, and I'm interested to see how this evolves, which is students identifying for themselves, maybe earlier than they used to, that there's a gap that they want to fill, and going and making the most of online education to fill that. And I'm interested to see how universities will work together with organizations like Coursera in the future to enable that kind of exchange and kind of self-identification of learning needs to continue. So we talked about what students are going to learn that they clearly think might help them with their employability skills. And I wanted maybe to come back, well, straight into the workplace. So I'll go to Marielle and say, how does that reflect what you've observed, and what have you seen in particular over the last 18 months, both in your role as a professor and in the workplace? What have students been turning to, and is there something that we can keep from this experience and take forward?
Yes, well, I'm teaching avionics. So avionics is electronics on board, on power electronics. So I'm working on mainly on the clean sky, with more electrical aircraft, so in digital technologies in general. But it's true that I discovered during this pandemic that the students, they realized that they don't have all the skills and abilities that they need when they finish. So it's true that in Europe we have very traditional studies in aerospace engineering, and they want to know other tools. They want to know other programming languages. So they started to study on their own, free, thanks to this pandemic. So many of them are free or very cheap. So they started to know about, for example, data science, machine learning, virtual and augmented reality, Python language. So they discovered that they need to know these kind of things if they want to contribute to the needs of the industry currently. So they go faster than the profession, than the university. So they are complementing, yes, at the end of their studies, mainly when they do their final project, they study something complementary. So courses, in addition to the official courses. So it's good for us also, because now we are redesigning the studies at the university in order to include these new skills, not only, of course, soft skills, but also these new digital tools.
Okay.
And I think that not only aerospace engineering, that's my field. I think that the same technologies, you can apply the same technologies, for example, to health, for teaching, for learning, for training, because we apply these technologies for training for pilots, for technicians, for students, so for everybody. So I think that it's really nice for us when you work in engineering, you can apply your knowledge to many different fields, even with this crisis that we have in aeronautics. So we are surviving thanks to this. I think it's really important also.
So actually what you're making me think, Marielle, is that there's a trend here that will continue even deeper into the workplace as professionals also keep coming back for more training, in the same way that students are learning that they can continue with their training. I'm wondering if we can hear from Bonnie on that. You've been working in education for some time. How do you think we're going to, what do you think we're going to hang on to from this experience and take forward, and how can we get this balance of, you know, learning and taking leveraging digital skills to help students with workplace skills, and not only students?
Yeah, really an interesting topic. First, I just want to tell you, you know, honestly, my entire career got kicked off because of what you are just mentioning, right? While I was at the university, doing some hands-on labs and training on the tools really helped me get that first job, just kind of finishing and closing the gap that the panelists are discussing. It gave me the opportunity to have the right discussions with my first employer ever as a young engineer to even get that first job. And then now you fast forward, you know, 30 something years, the customers that I see, right? My customers coming to learn the software. How are they learning? They want to learn as they are doing their jobs, right? So hands-on training becomes so important because we really don't have the time anymore. Everything is so busy. Life is going by so fast to even take the time and say, I'm taking a week and I'm going off and I'm going to take some education classes, right? It becomes really important to include that learning as a part of your job. So as students, as new, you know, fresh graduates, we need to learn how to learn. And then you carry that learning into your career because it never stops. You know, your job is going to be moving so fast and you want to be the best at what you're doing, and you need to continue that learning. And digital learning is really the way to be able to do it all, you know, to be able to have a successful career and also, you know, a successful life. Can have a family, you can work, because you can get more done with digital education and hands-on, you know, labs and all of that. Yeah.
And Bonnie, let me ask you, maybe I'm putting you on the spot here, but do you have any advice for the university, you know, the deans and the faculty who are with us on how to help students identify what it is that they need to learn? Because, you know, I know when you look at platforms like Coursera, there are just so many different things. And we talk a lot about interdisciplinarity, and that this is very important for engineering, but also getting computer science, getting good data skills. How would you help students to understand what they need?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. You know, I always honestly think that the best workers at work are those who are totally motivated. And motivation, where does it come from? When you marry your interest, right? Your personal interest and your passion with the hard work, then you can succeed. So for the universities, right, you need to have a lot of different offerings so that the students can kind of zero in on their passion. We don't want to, you know, zero in on something that maybe we don't have the passion for, right? But we want to learn more about, you know, the industry, what we want to go into, what is happening in the marketplace, what the trends are, and then really get educated on that. And the best way to do that is in a digital way, right? Because now there's more access to, you know, wider tools and wider, you know, topics that the students can really zero in on to get that experience. And just being able to add that to your resume, to your, you know, background of what you have learned and what you have done can really make you more marketable. So good for the university, good for the students, just having more access to a wider, you know, offerings.
So what we see is both following your passion, but also keeping an eye on what employers are saying that they need, and something that you can be concrete about, and put it on your CV and say, I've done this and it's helping me. I'm going to come to Laura. And Laura, you have a fascinating role right now, and I know that it's not where you started out in your career. And I wondered whether you can tell us a little bit about how how do you personally use digital and online learning to make those transitions?
I'm on mute. That's always the question, isn't it now? If I go back to my university, so I did, it was a hybrid between computer science and management. It's called management and IT, but it was a mixture of like Java and software engineering, and then more sort of like business studies. But I left university kind of not really knowing what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something in technology, but wasn't really sure what. And I did find that at least my degree, I don't think it's changed a lot, to be honest. It's quite rigid. There wasn't a lot of flexibility to choose different modules and different paths. And as Bonnie said about choosing kind of what your passions are, it was very much like, here's the course and they sort of presented. And I kind of left not really having an idea also of what is out there in the workplace, like what types of jobs there are. And so I joined a technology grad scheme, and the way at least my grad scheme worked is they just placed you in a role that they thought would be suitable. And I was placed in technology project management. And so that's kind of what I did for a while. And I think coming out of university, I had this sort of thing that, well, this is going to be my career now, and this is what I'm going to do. And obviously, I did another role after the grad scheme, and obviously then my experience on my CV was technology project management. So that's the jobs that I was applying for, because that's on paper the only experience that I had. And it was only as I kind of got further down the line, I realized like, this is really not for me. I want to go back to being more hands-on, actually building things. The project management side is not really for me. But I did really struggle then. I was like, well, where do I go job-wise? No one's going to hire me into a role that I don't have experience in. And so I turned to online learning and online education. At the time, I kind of found cloud and AWS. So obviously it's kind of, I'd say relatively new. It's obviously a lot more mainstream now, but we're talking sort of years ago, it was kind of up and coming a bit more. And at the time, the company that I was working for was actually doing a migration to AWS. I wasn't involved in it, but I was kind of aware of it. So I decided to go have a look into it. And AWS do online certifications, because we kind of know that it is so important to do online learning and continuous training also while you're in a career as well. Like, it doesn't stop once you're in a job, like you need to continuously learn. And so that's kind of what the certifications are for. And I found, so basically I was like, okay, I'm going to do the entry level certification just to kind of broaden my horizon and see what cloud's all about. And I used online learning and training and videos and also labs. And I think they are very, very important. And I'll kind of mention that in a moment. But I then really discovered that I loved it and kind of decided to go down this path. And I was like, okay, this is the career that I want to, I suppose, go into. But I think, struggled with the kind of getting a job, because on paper, again, my experience was project management, and sure, I was taking a few certifications, but I think from a employee's point of view, it's okay, well, do you have the experience to be able to do this job? And so this is where I think like labs and projects really come into play. And the way I got, not my job at AWS, but the job previous to that, was because I actually did personal projects, and I built things to show my skills, and I used like online labs to help me and to learn. And then I was able to put the links like to GitHub and to like online portfolios onto my CV to be like, here's actually some practical experience. And I only gained those experience and be able to do that via sort of online learning and labs.
You've got, thank you, Laura, for that. It's a really great, just an analysis of the challenges that you faced, but also how you've then identified ways to bridge the gap, and also just, curiosity and exploring to see what is it that you're actually passionate about, what do you love. You provided a perfect bridge actually back to Samar, who I really want to come back to about this. We've talked hands-on, I think you mentioned several times there when you were talking on projects. And I've got two questions for you, Samar, that I would like to come back to. And the first one, and I think that all of our audience will recognize this, both as professionals and from the point of view of their students. We need engineers to be technical experts, to have a whole range of professional skills, to be ready to work interculturally, internationally, internationally, and to you know, and top up and have CV ready skills as well. You know, how can it's a huge amount to fit into education, right? How can a university do it all? And in particular, this question of hands-on learning, I wonder, because I know that you've got that on the Coursera platform, have you got any tips, any practical tips that you would give to our university audience to help them think through how can we make hands-on engineering education more accessible for students right now at this time?
Okay, thank you. So let's start with the first question. I mean, I think a lot of universities can do something like this alone, but I definitely think that they don't need to. And I think what the last year has shown us is that there's so many tools when it comes to, you know, digital education that they can use that could really make that experience so much easier and would allow them to focus on what they do best, and then complement, you know, their areas of strength with other resources and opportunities that could then you know, add value to the learners, but also to the faculty and the staff. And I think it's important not to forget them. You know, they need support when it comes to how to transition to teaching online. As we said, this is a new reality, and it is going to stick around for a little while. So it's important that they do it well, and that they feel empowered to do it effectively. But also, as Laura and others shared, students need to have some sense of what is out there, you know, and how to prepare for this world of work that feels like just you know, a big cloud of, you know, of uncertainty for them, particularly in this point in time. And I think what's important to recognize when it comes to you know, engineering schools in particular is that you know, it's a very fast moving field, you know, and it's hard to expect a university to be able to stay on top of these trends and to be able to offer all these different software and tools on a regular basis. And so drawing on resources that are available, that are designed by the leading universities, the leading companies, a little bit like what we have on Coursera or other platforms, allows them to then source these materials and source these opportunities for the students to ensure that they're always competitive and are prepared for this workplace. We know that the median half-life of a skill in the tech and data science space is around 7 years shorter than for any other domain. And so there's no question that you know, that drawing on these resources would be helpful. And hands-on learning is one experience, one way to do that. It also is a way for students, as Bonnie was sharing, to explore new ideas, explore new passions, rather than, you know, enrolling in a program and being stuck in it for 4 years. They can try and test new things and see what they care about, and then, you know, decide if that's the way that they want to go. So what does this hands-on learning experience look like? You know, the way it looks like on our platform in particular, we've got what we call guided projects, which are essentially 1 to 2 you know, practical opportunities for a student to apply the theory in a virtual environment. So they go, you know, online directly. They don't need to download either software or a tool. It's all available directly on the browser. On the it'll be a split screen view where on the right hand side they'll see the instructor who would have recorded a video explaining what task they're expected to do. So say they're using a data visualization tool, they'll explain the task at hand. They would have uploaded the data set that they would be working with. They would be using something like Tableau to do the data visualization, and the instructor would be guiding them through that whole process. And then the student would be following along and doing it at the same time. So they wouldn't have to toggle between different screens. They wouldn't have to get a license or download you know, whatever software tool. And so from that perspective, it's a much easier experience. And it's one that, you know, where the faculty member can offer these opportunities either as a flipped classroom or as a form of assessment or assignments. And there are so many different ways for them to do it. You know, I think just in terms of do's and don'ts, just a few points to highlight. One thing is around ensuring that the software or the tools that the students are using in these opportunities are relevant to the workplace. You know, they want to be learning, as we said, things that they can then apply. Having a certificate to show, you know, I've learned how to use, you know, Python, how to create on my own website or whatever it is, something that they can then apply in the workplace and illustrate to employers. The second one is to actually incorporate it in a meaningful way within the broader learning, so that they're actually developing those skills and it feels like it ties into everything else that they're studying. I would say, and then to give some flexibility to students to really explore so that they can find their passions and then decide where they want to go. So those are just a few highlights, but very much recommend this. And we're seeing 30% higher skills development for students in courses when they are able to apply their learning. So from that perspective, there really is evidence to show that that's something great that can be applied within schools.
Okay, that's great. There's some data there that backs that up, and in fact, it's perfect timing because I've seen one question already from the audience from Eldert at Camp. Hi, Eldert. Thank you for joining us. And he's just touching on that question about accreditation, right? And this is, of course, something that's really important, in particular in engineering education, where there is, a deep and lengthy process to go for courses to be accredited. Do you see academic programs being agile enough to offer accreditation when the course comes from a mixture of what's being developed in the institution and then coming from an outside source, potentially a commercial platform? What's your view on that?
Yeah, so I think it's important. It's an important point to recognize. I unfortunately don't think the higher education space is very agile yet. I think there's a lot that's happened over the past year, and I think ministries are becoming much more aware of the need to do that. Generally, what we're seeing is that obviously it varies by country, so it's difficult to provide a general response. But essentially, every institution has to follow whatever guidelines they have. But there are a number of different ways in which one can incorporate digital education into their teaching of structured accredited academic programs, and that's through drawing on. They can be full courses, for example, from Coursera, because our courses are actually shorter than a full course within a university. It can be used a little bit like a textbook, so you ask the students to do certain modules in certain weeks, and over the course of the whole semester, they would have completed a course on Coursera. Other ways are to just pick out, some parts of a course that they can use. And when it comes to the hands-on learning experiences like guided projects, that's actually something that, because they're used as assignments, you don't need to adjust any accreditation requirements for that. So there really are very different ways of going around it, depending on what the guidelines may be in every country or every institution. But I think there's still a bit of a way to go before we get to, really being able to draw on it in a much more structured way or a standalone courses that would be accredited themselves.
Okay, thank you for that. And maybe, Bonnie, I can just touch on that with you as well, with the experience that you have of digital tools and digital education for some time. How does Siemens approach this, making sure that accreditation is supported wherever possible?
Right, exactly. So, certification becomes a really important part of online and digital education, right? Because you can imagine, when the students are free to maybe pick and choose portions of the material that's available to them, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that some learning has happened, right? That the experience of seeing lecture material, information, and then trying something on your own, did it stick with the students? So a lot of the classes and the material that we have, at the end, there are quizzes, there's ways to really test that learner to make sure that they have understood what we tried, the message that we tried to get across, the educational content. So I think if we're clever about how we use the exams and the certification, then that is something that definitely works. And you can, there are exams that are proctored so that that the learner is taking the exam themselves. So there are many different aspects of certification that is out there, and I really view that is really necessary to be included as a part of digital and online learning. Then you can be sure something has happened, right? Sticking information, and you can carry that to your job or, the next thing that you're going to work on. Yeah.
I sometimes wonder, because in the employer forums that I join, I don't hear a lot of talk at the moment about micro credentials, alternative certificates, and I think that there's some education to do there.
I love that you're saying that. Yeah, I love that you're saying that. You know, I'm using that analogy with my team and everybody that I talk to, that I told you guys, when I started talking about online education and put it on the CDs, everybody thought I was crazy. Now I'm talking about certification and everybody's looking at me at the workplace like I'm crazy. That is the wave of the future. It is coming. We need to be prepared for it. It needs to be an integral part of learning online, is getting certified. So you are learning something. It's coming.
So at universities, we need to be educating the employer relations and the employer contacts that are working with your university, so that they know that you're offering these micro credentials and alternative certification as well, so that when they get your student CVs, they totally understand what the quality of the education is there that they're being presented with. That's a great question, Elda, and you've also given me the chance just to say we really welcome additional questions. We're going to have just 2 or 3 additional minutes of discussion here before we go into our breakout rooms, because I want to come to this topic about, in particular, female learners, and how can, if at all, can digital education support female engineers both in their studies and getting into the workplace. And if anybody in the audience has additional questions, could be about that topic or could be about any of the other things we've discussed or something else that you're inspired to ask to the panel, please write it up there and we'll answer in person, or we'll answer online, or when we come back from the breakout rooms. So please do let us have your questions. And let me jump in with this question then about female. I'm going to come to you, Marielle, to start off with here, because I know that this has been a passion of yours for a long time, and you've even, you created your own company and are employing female engineers there. I want to know, we've been working on this engineering diversity question for a long time. How are we doing? And do you see any opportunity with digital education to improve on getting more women into engineering in the workplace?
Difficult question. But yes, but it's true that I think that the situation is changing slowly, but changing. And the pandemic, I think that the situation was not bad for women. In fact, I think that we are in our company, we have 35 engineers and 30% women, and for us it's talent. So we want people good, but for women, they have the freedom to choose. So yes, I think that the technologies, the digital tools, the technology gives women the opportunity to choose, to organize your time, to have the balance that you need in your personal and professional life. So I think I have 3 kids, funny like you. So I like the family, I like the friends, I like to have a good. I want to be happy, and also I would like to give a happy life to my engineers. So the thing that we try to do is to give them, we take care of them physically and psychologically. There is coaching, virtual courses. So they can choose once per month. They can propose courses that they want to do, complementing their knowledge. You can imagine they work in groups in different projects. We have running 24 projects, different projects, and they want to learn something that they like, or something that they feel that they need. So the company gives them the opportunity to do it. So I think that we have to promote this kind of education. I'm professor as well, so it's really important to be well coordinated, because when we are talking about online courses, and I want to, in our future, we would like to have online courses, the certification of these courses. Perhaps it's possible, I think so. We can start as not mandatory, not yet, but as optative courses. I think that is possible, but it's true that I agree with Bonnie as well, that we have to evaluate the knowledge. So somewhere, so we need perhaps what we are doing is something interesting. It's interesting that I wanted to share with you, is that we are creating a virtual tool for training, where they they learn something, but with a visual procedure, so automatic step by step. But at the same time, the tool is evaluating the knowledge, different phases, and at the end, you know what they know. So it's something interesting, not only for engineers, but for students and for everything. So in this case, I think that for women and for men, it's useful for everybody. But for women, we're not talking about women. We're talking about what we are doing. It's better to do like this. What are we doing? No?
Yeah.
About the things that the technology that they're developed by women. No, by the talent that we have.
Yeah.
So yes, this is the best, and I think that it's true that still we have to work more on the base of the families and the society in order to attract female in engineering, because they don't know the opportunities that the technology offers them for their life. So we have to continue working on this.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a role for families too, which I think is a really important message, and also talking about the purpose, not just that we want women, but for what, and the purpose of what they're going to do. Bonnie, that makes me think as well of something that you said to me when we were preparing this over the last couple of weeks. What inspired you to become an engineer, Bonnie, and what can we use today to inspire more young women to come into engineering?
Yeah. So actually, I was sharing that you can tell from my accent, I'm Middle Eastern. I'm from the Middle East, and my role model for wanting to be an engineer was my mom. My mom was the first in our entire family to become educated, to get a high school degree, and to become a teacher. So, I looked at her as someone who was a great mom, was able to work. And then, honestly, in my country, being an engineer was not an option for me. I could have been a nurse, I could have been a teacher. So when I moved to America, my background, my math was really good in math and, science. And I thought, why not? I could be an engineer and I could be great at it. So, and then to kind of tie that into the whole online education that we're talking about, as a female engineer, I think there is so much more that you can do as a male engineer. The people who we are is because of the support of everybody that also surrounds us. So I want to include, our male role models as well. But you can do more with the time that you have if you use that time wisely, right? So online education provides an environment to do that. The only other thing I wanted to say is just to also be really careful, because we could go down this path of online education and just really focusing on me studying on my own. And that's not what the real world is all about, right? So we want to make sure as universities, as students and workers, that we include in our projects a diversity, because a very important part of being successful is having that confidence as a female engineer to stand in a room of 100 men and give a speech and feel very comfortable with who you are, what you know. It's not about me being a female, it's about me being an engineer. And it's about me doing, the hands-on that we talked about, doing that in a team, which included men, included women. So when I face my audience, I'm very comfortable and confident as a female engineer to, get that done. So yeah, just wanted to put a plug in for that. Get your confidence.
That's absolutely brilliant advice, Bonnie, and it comes across as well. I love it that you also share that we respect and look for male role models and female role models, and we all have to work together. So we all have to understand that. I'm gonna ask one more question here, and again, encourage more from the audience, and we'll jump into our groups. Just to come back to Samar, just before we go into the groups, because I know that you've also looked at the data on what is it that female engineers are going to study and looking for. Is there anything that you can share that would help us make sure that we leverage online education also to help female engineers into the workplace?
Yeah, I mean, I mostly have some general trends that illustrate, I think, the value of online learning for females. And so what we found over the past year is that we've seen an uptick in terms of the number of females choosing to study online. So there's been a 17% increase in total number of female learners on our platform, and in particular, a greater growth in the STEM space. So they've gone up from 31 to 38% over the past year. So that's really an indication that we are moving in the right direction, and that digital education really provides that flexibility that we've just been talking about to allow them to continue their studies while also pursuing other responsibilities or other personal work responsibilities. And I think it goes back to what Laura was sharing, which is that perhaps some of them didn't have that option to become an engineer when they went to university. And actually with the drive towards lifelong learning, they now have this opportunity to stay specialized in an area that they didn't have an opportunity to do before, with professional certificates similar to those that Laura completed, provided by some of the industry leaders. They have so many such opportunities to transition their careers or to pursue something they didn't have an opportunity to do. And so I think that's the biggest value that digital education can provide females, but essentially anybody as well.
Yeah, a lot of food for thought there. I think what we would like to do is maybe take a step back and think about what we've heard. We are going to provide a forum to do that. So maybe if I can ask the speakers just to hang on for a second, do not go anywhere. Razvan, if you could share our instructions on the screen. And thank you very much. And audience, please do keep using the chat. Share your questions if you would like to, but also keep an eye on the chat function for a link, because we are going to share a link with you here. And what I'd like you to do is to click on the link, which will take you to our breakout Zoom room, and you will then automatically be assigned to a small group of 5 or 6 people, get the chance to meet some of the other people in the audience too. Follow the instructions which are on the right of this slide and will also be in the chat. I'll come to those in just one second. You'll have 20 minutes, about 15 minutes by the time we've gone into the rooms and we come out of the rooms to chat, but enough time to talk between you and discuss the question. And then Stefan, who is your host, or Dominic, will bring you back from the room and back into the main room when I would like to hear from each group just one insight. Now, we're not going to assign formally a moderator. I would like each group to quickly choose a moderator in order to have somebody to capture the comments and the discussion that you share. A very simple process for doing that. If nobody volunteers, if you have a volunteer, then great. If not, then can you briefly introduce yourselves, give your first name, your institution, and the moderator can be the person whose first name is closest to the start of the alphabet letter A. Okay, so use that guidance if you don't have a volunteer, and discuss the question below, which will be in the chat as well. How can we leverage digital tools to better support female learners, both through engineering education and into the engineering workforce? And with International Day of Women in Engineering coming tomorrow, this will be one of the outputs that we will share from our session. When you're prompted, come back to the main room, and moderators, please be ready just to very briefly share one comment or an insight from your group chat. Okay, so far so good. I cannot see you, so I'm assuming that you're all smiling and giving me the thumbs up, and I'm handing over now to Razvan, Dominic and Stefan to send everybody off into the groups. So